Welcome to OwlMtModels video instructions on F-50-Series flat cars, Part 2, covering the underframe details and brake parts. This video will supplement but not replace the written instructions with additional step-by-step guidance and help show techniques for assembling this model. We hope you find it helpful. Let's look at the two styles of SP brake systems available for the F-50-Series cars. All classes were built with K-system brakes. After development and adoption of the AB brake systems in the 1930s, some cars were refitted with AB systems by 1953 for continued use in interchange outside of the SP system. Alright, here is our brake detail shot, and right now I want to show the differences in the AB and K brake system. This brake cylinder here is for the AB system, which does not have the combined reservoir and valve system that the K-brake has. If you're going to use the K-brake, this is the only piece that you're going to need in terms of brakes. The K system needs this part right here, which is a brace for the end of the K system here. The AB system will use this bracket and this valve. The valve mounts onto the bottom of the bracket, and there are 5 holes in the back of the AB system valve here. Now those 5 holes, if modelers desire, you can plumb that with wire. We'll be installing a K-brake system on this kit that we're building right now. This slot right here on the left side of the car, when you're looking at it from the B end, is where the brake cylinder is going to mount. So we're going to be cutting out a pad to go there. And with a K system, the center crossbeam on this side, which will go right here, needs to have the support system for the reservoir part of the K-brake. So here's the detail sprue. This is the brake cylinder bracket right here that I have hold of, and so I'm cutting that off. And there will be a little bit of cleanup work with a file. Not very much. It doesn't take much. I'm just going to clean up that edge. Okay, here's the bracket. Now, there's one side, these mounting studs here, these bolts, are slightly lower and they're offset. This side, which is raised, is going to be against the lead weight, and the side over here with the pad and this notch along here will be facing down, and it's what you'll be able to see while you're looking at the car. So basically it's going to go in like this. Okay, I've added some CA ahead of time to the weight, and now the detail part is going to go here, and now that it's on there, I'm going to see if I can slide it in. There it goes. Make sure that the center sill is straight when this is all settled out. Now if I get a side angle here, should be able to see that there's a slight gap just above these mounting studs here, and that is good because now the brake cylinder will be able to sit right against there. Next part we'll need off of the detail sprue here is the bracket to hold the reservoir end of the K-brake, which is this large piece here. So I'm going to cut that off. Take the sprue out of the way again. Grab it with my tweezers. This is the upper side. You can see the T-section here with the rib. So this side here will go towards the lead weight. The side that's all flat will be down towards the brake system. Take 2. Okay. So we're going to cut out the brake support for the K-brake, the center rib, and this one has the support structure for the K-brake, and I'm not going to grab this with the tweezers and launch any pieces across the room. So this piece will slide over here like this and go into the center sill. Now, right when you get it lined up, one trick is to take your liquid
styrene cement and start melting where it's going to go ahead of time. And then a few seconds later you should be able to just press it in like that. The outer edge is now in contact with the side sill, and a little bit of glue there should start setting this piece in.
Taking a break for a moment, we are now going to look at the AB system.
Alright, this is a brief overview of how to install the AB system. Now the AB system starts more or less with these very fine details. This is the mating ring for the combined reservoir, and I'm going to cut that off and hopefully not have it shoot across the room. The easiest way I've found to make this installation work is go ahead and leave the, thankfully that didn't go off the table, leave the AB reservoir on the sprue and put a small amount of liquid glue in the middle of it here where the part will go, and then carefully put the ring over it and press it down like that, and check on the back side, and we can see that it's opening up slightly. And I think I'm just going to grab my tweezers and clamp on that slightly. Now remember to use a little bit of extra glue if you need to soften the plastic so that it will conform to what we're trying to do here. Like that. There we go. Push that slightly up. Okay, I think I just got it to seat now. There we go. It shifted slightly. Shouldn't be too big of a problem though. Once that dries, we'll cut the back side flush. Alright, while the rest of the AB system is drying, the reservoir, I'm going to show how to install the AB valve here. So we're going to cut that sprue, and I'm going to keep the little round boss on the bottom of the valve there, or actually that's the top of the valve. So there's the valve. Now I'm going to make sure that I'm not seeing the flange on the rib here. And I'm going to grab this with my tweezers. Now I'm making sure that the holes are on this side, and there's a small boss on this side of the valve. So the holes need to go towards the center of the car, which is this side of the cross member here. So I'm going to put a small amount of glue here, and then I'm going to stick that onto the hole. It looks like that went on perfectly. It's nice and square. I'm going to add a little bit more glue just to make sure that it welds in there properly. Now, this is one way to do this. The other way to do this would be to mount the cross member on the car body and then just stick the AB reservoir or the AB valve onto the car. Alright, now that the AB reservoir has dried, I'm going to come in and cut these off flush. Here's one of our AB reservoirs with the ring already installed. You need to be a little bit careful because there's a fragile part right there. So what I'm going to do is actually cut off the sprue back here and here like that, and probably come in and cut the sprue there. That strained it slightly. These parts that I'm showing with are styrene, and the ABS parts that you're going to be dealing with, the brown ones, are much more resilient. So we'll come in and cut that there. Turn this around, cut on the supplementary beam there, and there is our completed and undamaged AB reservoir. Alright, here we have the AB valve combined and glued on to the cross member. I'm going to come in and cut that with my flush cutting pliers and take the sprue away. We will now pull up a car body and I will show where these parts attach. Okay, here's a car that has its complete AB system already installed. You'll notice that this is the reservoir for the AB system, and it basically connects in here. The cross member that I'm not hanging onto has a small piece of material on the back side there, which is right here, and that will key into the center sill. The outer parts here will also key into the side sill at this point here and this point here. So once this comes in here and locks in, it'll be solid and part of the car. One option, of course, also is if the modeler desires, they can add ACC to the back of the main part of the reservoir, and that will help the part adhere to the lead center sill. Here we're looking at the opposite side of the AB system from the valve side. The valve is here, and this cross member here is the one that has the small mounting pad on the bottom, which we cut off before. That's this piece here. This would be simply installed by pressing it down against the floor, sliding it in, and gluing the joint between the cross member and the center sill once it gets in there and locks down.
And now we return you to your regularly scheduled car building.
Okay, now one part that each version of the brake system needs is this piece here with this little stirrup, and that is designed to contain the handbrake rod going to the B end of the car. So we'll cut that out, turn that around this way. That piece is going to go in the last mount here on the B end. This is where the handbrake will be. This is where the brake piston will be. It'll be right here. So we'll grab this piece, stick it in there like that. A little bit of the glue. Everything should be good. There we go. Okay, the next step is to cut off 8 of these plain cross members and set them out on the table, hopefully where you won't lose them. I think I have 7 of them. And now we will start installing these little critters. At some point, some modelers might not decide to install these because they're just very small and somewhat finicky to put on. There are a couple of spares. Depending on which brake system you're putting on the car, you'll have a couple of these extra. One option is to press from the bottom and get the beam to press into the cross member. There we go. I'm going to do the rest of these off camera probably, as they're going to be hard to film.
Production F-50-Series kits with weight covers are easier to assemble with only liquid plastic glue welding the details to the cover and the center sill.
One quick note here on these flanges, you can see right here a gap between this flange and the side sill. That is supposed to be there. Don't sand or don't expect this side sill to go all the way up to these flanges. The bolster actually does extend about 15 or 20 thousandths past. So that's supposed to be there. The next part that we're going to be installing are the roping staples, which are these lovely little pieces here. And I will be doing this carefully with, let's see if I can do this. I want to grab as far down on the sprue as I can, and I'm going to grab it in my fingers so that it doesn't shoot off, and there's one of them. I'm going to go ahead and cut them all off at this point. Sometimes it's more ideal to go at them from the top side here, where the sprue cutter can get in like that. And for the last one here. Okay, there's all 4 of them. Now, these should be able to dry fit, and you can check to make sure that they're going to fit well on the car. I'm going to grab them with my pliers here. I usually grab, I'm off camera right now trying to actually get hold of it, but I usually try to grab it like this. This can cause a little bit of torque when you're pressing it into the car side, but generally it seems okay most of the time. Let's see if I can get a good camera angle here. So I'm going to mount it in the hole, press it in. That one looks like it did pretty well. Still not quite square, and it came off in my finger because I didn't put any super glue on it. So that's the next step, is get a little bit of CA. One nice thing about doing it this way is you're actually getting a little bit of press fit. If the part is a little bit, if that pin is too big to go into the hole, this will give a bit of an adjustment factor in that area. There we go. There, it just went in. Press it. And now it's trying to come off. CA should take, that should work. Okay, now all 4 roping staples are mounted on the car. Sometimes those do require quite a bit of force, so when you're pressing in like this or like this, you're going to be pushing pretty hard into the side of the car, and it's important to brace the car as those sprues form the hole. One option is you can drill those holes a little bit bigger, but that's also one of the reasons why I stopped working on the underframe at this point and installing any of the other brake cylinders and so forth until I got these on. The next step we'll be doing is the grab irons. Okay, we're getting close to the end of the underframe sprue. I'm going to come in here and de-sprue the coupler box lids real quick, because I don't want to risk them getting damaged while we're doing the grab irons. There we go. We'll do cleanup on those later. We'll set those aside for now. Now, the next step is to get the jig ready. The jig is right here. This will be for bending the grab irons. I'm going to cut the sprues like this so that we can get in there easily. I'm going to go by here and cut off the whole part that used to have the center sill. And this piece here is now junk. So now we have a nice narrow piece like this that we can hold in our offhand. And now I'm slightly regretting cutting that exactly right there, because it's going to be moving around. In fact, at this point I'll probably cut the entire section off there. It's kind of nice to keep that, but because of the way that was trimmed. Now this is about hand length for me, so this is pretty nice. The next step here is to grab your piece of wire for the grab iron, and I'll be bending about 200 thousandths, in other words a long tail, and bend a nice 90-degree bend there. Let me get this. I'm right-handed, so I'm switching back to being right-handed while I'm doing this. So there's a nice bend. And I transfer this back to my right hand. I'm going to put that into the farther hole, cover that with my left thumb, and bend and pull slightly. That should be pretty good. and that bent a grab iron. Now, that was pretty sloppy. It's more comfortable when you do this in a comfortable position instead of out in front of a camera. So I'm going to straighten this up a little bit. And about 200 thousandths in, I'm going to cut this piece of wire off. It's being a little bit longer because I want the tails to go through the side of the car. So now we have the car here. And I grab this with my pliers. Now, I'm going to be doing this dry fitting. One thing that you probably want to do if you have it available is use some form of blacken it or other etching to get the metal to be ready to take paint. It'll be about there. One thing some people will do is they'll take a piece of styrene and stick it in there. It's going to be a little hard to do that on this because of the coupler or the stake pocket being there. So with that there, it now will be pretty easy to come in from the back side and apply super glue in here on these legs of the grab iron and secure it. Okay, that's one that's bent more, that one's bent cleaner. It's a little awkward to do that out in front of the camera. Okay, here we are with all 4 grab irons on the sides, dry fit, and I'll be going and putting glue on those. The next step will be putting the short-legged grab irons on the ends here, and there'll be a short grab iron on this side and a long grab iron on this side. Okay, time to build a short-legged long grab iron. I'm going to bend it about the length of the tip of my plier. And again, go into the long hole, the long set of the jig. And see if I can get a good bend right into the jig hole slot there. That one came out pretty good. These are only about 100 thousandths long, and there'll be 2 of them like this and 2 in the short configuration using the closer spaced holes. Okay, now we're going to be doing the short-legged short grab irons. So I'm putting it in the closer spaced hole now and bending it through the jig there. There we go. And we'll be cutting this off. These are going to go into the actual end of the car, and so I'm actually going to cut this a little bit shorter, maybe about 60 or so thousandths. That side will go into the outboard end of the car over here. Okay, here we are putting in the short grab iron, and I'm going to look at it from above and make sure that it's square with the world. I'll use the tip of a blade to get it square, and it's still moving around on me a little bit. Okay, so right here, this particular hole is very thin, and it's really only a locator in the end sill. You have to drill through here into the actual side of the car like this to get enough purchase for the grab iron to actually set into there. Okay, here I'm going to be inserting the narrow grab iron, and there's glue on that tip, the outer tip. It's going into there, so there's that. And now I'm going to grab my X-Acto blade and dig out the grab iron slightly. This is a little tricky right now because the inner side of this grab iron is completely loose. It'll be glued in later from the back side. Okay, I've finished up now. I used a number 11 X-Acto blade like this to carefully pry out the various grab irons and get them square. So now they're all even and square to the body of the car. This one's a little bit tight still, so I'm going to pry that out carefully with the tip of the blade. It shouldn't dull the blade too much. I'm basically just tweaking the spacing of the grab irons right now. Okay, now we're going to go in here and de-sprue the K-brake. I'm going to use the eraser here as a backstop for the blade. It should be able to absorb a little bit of flex. Now, the production parts here have another sprue coming off here. There we go. Now I just cut the, you need to make sure that this little tip stays as part of this brake cylinder, so I actually cut that up here. And now this last heavy sprue I'm going to cut with my standard nippers, which should be the entire, there it comes, the entire piece. Now we'll inspect the parts real quick and do a little bit of light filing where these sprues were. And on the bottom there should be a lever going through there. However, can't really I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the flashing there. If I want to put it back in, I'll do that later. And lastly, I'm going to clean the bottom of the cylinder here with a file. About like that. There is a very small bleed valve right here. It's very small. So I'm going to keep that and make sure I don't knock that off. Okay, one small challenging part here. The K-brake is going to go like this. This is the same as with the AB, and it's going to sit like this. The rod needs to go through this small hoop here. And you're going to say, well, that doesn't work because we can't get the brake stirrup right there to be able to go through that. It's not going to go. So there's a little trick that I use. I'm going to come in here and very carefully cut the back side of that step, that little stirrup there. And being that these are ABS, which is more resilient than styrene, I'll be able to bend it open like that. The ABS will actually be more springy than the styrene piece, and it'll want to spring back. So you'll probably have to pull that apart just as you're doing this. So the first step on this is going to be get the K-brake lined up. Get out my glue here. Put some glue there and there. And then find that locating pin right there. Sorry, I had to be able to see where I was trying to get it to go. So now that's in. So basically there's a very small pin on the top of the brake cylinder that goes into the hole on the bracket here, and this end here should now line up as well. And I'm going to make sure that I got a good joint there by adding a little bit more glue. And that should settle in there pretty nicely. This pipe here will go up into the weight and disappear. One note in here is that the train line going through the car is up inside the weight, and so it saves a lot of trouble on models that normally you'd have full underbody detail. You'd have to be dealing with a train line. On this model, that's replaced by the weight, so there's not really any way that we can model that. If somebody did want to model it, they would be limited pretty much to just a straight pipe here and a straight pipe here going out to the glad hands. Okay, so now the stirrup has been cut here. The far end over here is still loose, and I should be able to spring the brake rod inside like that, and then carefully press the stirrup back square like that. And I'm going to get a little bit of glue and put that down there on the strap. And I'm going to carefully just make sure that that does weld. Okay, now this piece is usually a hair too long to go in there, and that's usually a good thing, because if it stays this way, it'll sort of interfere with the wheel sets. So I'm going to come in carefully and grab the chain and very gently bend it like that. It looks a little bit weird, but believe me, it works on keeping things out of the way of the wheels. So now I'm going to bring this up at an angle and put some glue on that, maybe a little bit more. And then the little brake step stirrup here. There we go. Now if I look at the brake rod here, it's basically straight. It should be straight. I'm going to put a little drop of glue up here to weld the brake rod to that stirrup, and that will pretty much do it. One option here also is to put a little bit of glue right here on the bolster and get the brake rod to glue to the bolster as well. That tends to keep things together. Alright, the next step is we go in and we cut the B end brake lever off of the sprue, like that, and the A end lever off of the sprue, like that. Sorry for my fingers being in the way, these things are kind of small. Okay, these parts both have a very small slot in them, right here and right here. That will be where the brake rods attach, like this. So what I usually like to do is take a little bit of tape. It doesn't really matter what kind of tape. This is actually Tamiya masking tape. It's pretty good tape. Helps to have things right side up. Okay, there we go. And that will hold that. And I'm going to take the wire and put a small drop of CA glue. This is thick CA glue now, mind you, not thin stuff. Get some thick CA glue. You can see it there on the end of the wire. And come down and land that into the brake. Basically, this is a brake clevis. The A end lever here is a adjustable one to be able to adjust the slack in the brake rigging. And what I will do is measure about 1.5 inches. Actually, probably more like 1.75 inches. There will be a jig on these. Let me double check this because I don't want to cut it too short. Okay, this is the A end lever. It's going to go about there. And I want some extra to be able to bend at the end. So I'm going to do, okay, let's call it 2 inches. So there's that. And the other lever here, we'll do the same thing. Small drop of glue. I think this one I'll try to do without the piece of tape. If I was smart, I would have glued both pieces down. And this one again wants about 2 inches. There should be enough. This is 15 thousandths wire, by the way. There should be enough 15 thousandths wire provided in the kit to do these rods. There's another rod on these cars that ran inside the center sills, and you can add that if you want. So right now I'm going to let these dry a little bit, and then we will be installing them. The next step is to drill a small hole. This is number 78 drill, I believe. I'm going to drill slightly offset here towards the, let's see, looking at the end of the car, this would be the right side of the car. And I don't really want to drill all the way through the deck, but I do want to get down into the center sill. Actually, I'm drilling into the block here between the center sills at the bolster, about 1/8 of an inch in from the bolster. And what I'm going to be doing is terminating the brake rod at this point and not going to the truck. Most HO scale models don't have working brake levers on their trucks, so this will be just a faked place to hide it. There we go. Okay, I'm sort of dry fitting this at this point. Right now I'm looking straight from the bottom at where this A-end rod is going to tie off, and then I can measure over. This will be much easier for all of you that have the instructions where we actually have a jig printed that you can lay this part up against. I'm doing it the old-fashioned way where I'm just grabbing it at a location. So I'm going to bend it 90 degrees inboard, and then about the width of my plier head, so about 80 thousandths, 90 thousandths. And I want to make sure I bend this the correct way. So this bend is going to go upward. So in other words, this bend is going towards the side where the wire went into the brake part. Okay, so here's the bent up rod. It has two 90-degree bends in it. I trimmed about 1/4 inch off of it. I only want about 3/16 here on the end. And this piece will go down into the little hole that I have drilled there, and the rod, or excuse me, the lever will go through the holes in the center sill, which I think you can see, and it will there we go through both of them. So on this side there's a opening here, and this rod should be roughly centered in there. You can see I can force it through further. Don't want it that far through. It'll be about there. And right now the rod looks a little bit long, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and make that bend slightly more than 90 degrees. That should adjust the length of the rod to fit properly now, which it does. So I'm going to adjust that to there and get out the liquid plastic cement and go inside here and inside here, which should give it plenty of support once that glue dries. And once that's dried, if I want to, I can flow some extra super glue down around this joint to secure it, although that's fairly well secured right now with just the spring force of the wire. Okay, there might be some question at this time as to which end we're working on. Right now, here's the brake cylinder going down to the brake wheel at this end of the car. The brake lever that we just installed was at the A end going down here. This is the nice simple end of the car. This next one, the brake lever that we're going to be installing, is actually going to come into the back side of the clevis right here at the end of the piston. And that is going to be a little bit tricky, but it's better than the alternative. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm looking straight from the bottom of the car at this point. Again, this will be much easier for you if you have a jig. That goes there. I come over here with my pliers. I grab there. I'm going to make a 90-degree bend here. Hopefully everything's staying square while I do this. And now grab it like this. And again, I want to make absolutely sure that my rod and everything is in the correct orientation here compared to the car body. and it is. It's actually going to be a little bit long, so I'm going to actually slack that bend a little bit. It's only going to be about 75 or 80 degrees. So now I'm going to bend this. I want that to be a 90-degree angle. So that looks pretty good. You can see I have a lot of extra material here, so I'm going to, again, cut that down to maybe 200 thousandths or so out there. Throw the extra over there in my scrap pile. Okay, so here's the bent part. Should be pretty easy to see there. There's the lever. Alright, so we're going to slide the lever in from this side. There it goes. Now, one thing that can be done here is I'm actually going to put a little bit of the glue on now to help soften the openings a little bit. There we go. That slid in real nicely. The rod should go directly, the lever should go directly in behind this part of this little pivot right here in between the links. That's good. And now I'm just going to hop the end of the rod over and stick it into the hole. Like that. And one last thing to do is put a little drop of glue behind the piece there and both sides of the center sill. And just press there, and I can see the other rod on this side move, which tells me that it's all the way through. So that completes the brake rods here. If somebody wants to, there's nothing stopping you from bending a 90-degree bend and then running a rod from here across and just laying on top of this point here and cutting it off. And that will simulate the connecting rod between the two levers. But again, from most angles, you're never going to be able to see that, so I'm not too worried about people putting that in. Okay, now with the super glue and no bends in the wire, I'm going to drop that in there and then just position it with my razor blade. Like that. The other way to do it is with a long enough 90-degree bend that you can push it through from far enough outside the car that you can reach it.
This concludes part 2. In part 3, we will be looking at the truck and coupler installations. Don't forget to check the website for additional roster information and techniques for weathering the decks. Please check back regularly with us for updates on upcoming projects, including the new modular lumber load kits and Blackburn Surebeet rack add-on kits for Southern Pacific F-50-Series flat cars. Feel free to contact us by phone or email with any questions regarding our models.